Welcome to The Outlet, an OTG production.
What's up, NBA fans? Welcome to another edition of The Outlet. With me, as always, Parth.
What's going on, Nick? Before we get started, just wanted to mention that you guys can all follow Ryan Clark VA on Twitter. He makes all of our music, so make sure to give him a follow. He's a talented kid.
Yeah, definitely check out his beats. Got some good stuff over there. But let's get into the ranking for today. At number 11, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. But before we talk about that, here's a clip from last season.
Westbrook, Adams, Durant, and Perry Jones for his length will guard the inbound pass.
Now Adams cannot let them get a direct pass into Anthony Davis over there.
Very close to a 5-second count. Davis at the buzzer for the win.
What an incredible shot, dude.
Yeah, that was a crazy shot, and it was a meaningful one, too.
Yeah, I think the Thunder and the Pelicans ended up with the same record, but the Pelicans had the tiebreaker advantage. And you could point to this clip as the reason why the Pelicans were the 8th seed and the Thunder were on the outside looking in.
Exactly. Big stuff from Anthony Davis. But let's talk about this ranking. Do you think 11's fair for the Pelicans?
I do think it's fair. I think that puts them at the 7th spot in our overall board. I think there are 6 Western Conference teams ahead of them in your rankings, and I think that's fair.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's fair. They obviously have maybe a possibility of going higher just because Anthony Davis is so good, but they have a lot of injury concerns on this team. But let's talk about key returners. Like I mentioned, Anthony Davis, Tyreke Evans, Drew Holiday, Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, Omer Asik, Quincy Pondexter. Who do you like to have a big season?
I think Drew Holiday, if he's finally healthy, will have a big season. I know when they made that trade, that draft day trade, where they sent, I think it was Nerlens Noel to Philly for Drew Holiday.
Yep.
But I think that last season with Philly, I think Holiday played with a stress fracture, and now I think he's been with the Pelicans for 2 seasons now, and he's maybe played 50% of the games. It's a really low number. So hopefully he can stay healthy because he's a talented point guard.
Yeah, I would even say maybe less than 50%. He is a talented point guard. He's been injured a lot. It'd be nice to get him to play with Anthony Davis a little bit, see what he's doing over there. But, I mean, I love Anthony Davis. He's a monster. In the next coming seasons, he might be the best player in the NBA.
I agree with that. It'll be him or Kevin Durant once LeBron starts to slow down.
Yeah, LeBron's getting up there in age. Anthony Davis has shown a lot of potential, not only offensively, but defensively. He's a beast. Other key returners that you like for the Pelicans?
Well, they re-signed Omer Asik, and I know a lot of people were iffy about it because they did give him a pretty sizable contract, but I think it's a great investment. You want to protect Anthony Davis, who is not slight of build anymore, but he's also not a bruiser. And you want someone like Omer Asik to play defense against those guys like Zach Randolph or maybe a Boogie Cousins, just guys that are physically dominant and overpowering. You want to keep those guys away from Anthony Davis just to save his legs.
And especially with Davis's injury history, he tends to get banged up a little bit. So if you can protect him a little bit, I think Omer makes sense.
And I think the Spurs did this also with Tim Duncan. You want to protect your franchise players, so you bring in players like Rasho Nesterovic, Fabricio Oberto, Francisco Elson. I think that was his name, French guy. But, yeah, I mean, they've always had players like that, Thiago Splitter. So they protect Tim Duncan well, and I think for the Pelicans to bring back Asik and also bring in Kendrick Perkins, even though he's not going to play much, I don't think. But I think having those guys to protect Anthony Davis will extend his career, and he'll be fresher later on.
Yeah, and that definitely should be able to help him out. Like you said, Spurs did that with Tim Duncan, and you want to protect your assets. So, yeah, let's talk about the offseason moves, though, for the Pelicans. They didn't really do a lot of stuff, but you mentioned they signed Kendrick Perkins. They did make a coaching change. They picked up Alvin Gentry, who could really help that offense.
I think that's the biggest offseason move. I mean, they did re-sign a lot of their players, but as far as returners and or as far as bringing in people and letting go of people, there aren't really major names. But Alvin Gentry is, I think, a great signing for them.
Yeah, I guess he really show the Pelicans front office what he wanted to do with Anthony Davis and really to take him to that next step, and that pushed them to pick him.
People know Alvin Gentry has a really good offensive mind. I think he took over for D'Antoni with the Suns.
Correct.
And then did he coach the Clippers at one point?
I'm not sure about that.
He may have been on the bench, but don't quote me on that. He may have been an assistant coach with the Clippers, but he was an assistant coach with the Golden State Warriors last season, and their offense was incredible. And that's not all Steve Kerr. That's a lot of Alvin Gentry. So expect that versatile offense to make its way down to New Orleans.
Yeah, especially because the Pelicans have the pieces to kind of play a spacing floor offense. They have Drew Holiday, Eric Gordon, Tyreke Evans, Ryan Anderson, Anthony Davis. That lineup could definitely go small.
And I've heard reports that Ryan Anderson has lost a ton of weight this offseason and looks really ready to make that next step in his career as a really good stretch four. And he's a really interesting stretch four too, because he doesn't really spend all of his time on the perimeter. That man can actually rebound the ball at a high rate.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing with Ryan Anderson. Like you said, he shoots the three ball well, but he also rebounds well. That's not the case. That's not the case for most 3-point shooters.
Yeah, so that offensive versatility they'll definitely be able to have. I think Asik will end up starting with Davis playing the 4, but if they do want to go small, they can always put Davis at the 5, Anderson at the 4, really stretch the court. And around the league, there's word that Anthony Davis is going to be a 3-point shooter. So just imagine him at one corner, Anderson at the other corner, and the lane wide open for people like Holiday, Evans, and Gordon to attack.
Yeah, that would be pretty insane. Yeah, I heard those reports about Davis as well. So his game is really taken it to the next level.
And then coming off you obviously don't want Davis to just stay in the corner. But he can be definitely a dynamic force when he's out there.
Yeah, he could have some great pick and pop, pick and roll game with Drew Holiday or Tyreke Evans, either of those two, especially with a floor space like that. It's going to be a tough job to defend the Pelicans. But let's talk about X factors for the Pelicans this year.
The X factor for the Pelicans will be health. Drew Holiday's injury prone. Not really his fault, but Ryan Anderson has been hurt the last couple of seasons. Eric Gordon, I feel like, hasn't been healthy since he came to New Orleans in that Chris Paul deal. And then Anthony Davis is surprisingly injury prone. I don't know if the extra weight that he's put on will help him. I think there was a couple of pictures of him this offseason where he's like throwing up a good amount of weight. And he looks big. Like he does not look small, and he doesn't look like that frail kid that we saw in Kentucky. But hopefully the extra added muscle will help him out. But he's been awfully injury prone since I feel like the championship game at Kentucky when he had that injury scare.
Yeah, Anthony Davis definitely added some size, so hopefully that keeps him healthy. But like you said, health's going to be the X factor for this team. I think every key returner we mentioned has missed time for the Pelicans in the past 2 seasons, so it's important for them to stay healthy if they want to take that next step and become a playoff team consistently. And if they want to just give somebody a scare in the first round and possibly upset them, they're going to need a healthy squad.
Yeah, I mean, they should have won. They should have won last season. They should have won a game, I should say, last season against the Warriors when Steph Curry hit that ridiculous corner 3-pointer.
Yeah, that shot was crazy. So the Pelicans need to learn from that, and they need to come back this season, do it with a different level.
Going off of injuries, one returner we did not mention yet is Norris Cole. I think he just signed his qualifying offer, so he'll be a free agent next summer. But he's a good backup to Drew Holiday, especially since Drew Holiday is hurt a lot. Cole brings that. Cole's played on 2 championship teams. He's gone to 3 NBA finals. So he can play in big moments. He can play against big teams. And he's a great backup for Drew Holiday.
Yeah, he had some nice moments when he got traded there last season. He also is like a defensive pest. He really can get after you defensively and annoy some point guards. Best case scenario for the Pelicans.
Best case scenario, I would say they jump up a spot or 2 in the playoffs and could possibly be a 5th or 6th seed. I don't see it happening. I think they're kind of stuck at their 7th seed. But with they could get some help from the teams above them who might sustain injuries. And if the Pelicans stay healthy, I think it's a possibility.
Yeah, I would say best case scenario, the Pelicans stay healthy. maybe they move up to that 6th seed if somebody gets hurt or just has a rough season. But I don't see them getting much higher than that with all the talent in the West. And just maybe they upset somebody in the first round because Anthony Davis is the type of player that can do that on his own. Worst case scenario for the Pelicans.
Well, I know we've mentioned with previous teams that were in the East that, hey, this is their floor is definitely the playoffs. That's not the case for the Pelicans. If Davis gets hurt, Holiday gets hurt, the West is deep enough to where the Pels could slip out of the playoffs. So that would be my worst case scenario. Injuries coming to bite this team, and then they don't make the playoffs after a successful run last season.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Worst case is they don't make the playoffs because they definitely want that experience. But hey, say Anthony Davis, like you mentioned, gets injured or one of the key returners does, it really hurts the team. And then you have teams like the Mavericks, the Kings, the Suns trying to jump into the playoffs this year. So it'd be interesting. You could definitely have to stay on top of your game in the West. But let's talk about the truth.
What'd you pick for the truth this time, Nick?
Today's emoji is a hospital. Because
why'd you pick the hospital, man?
I picked the hospital because the Pelicans, they need to stay healthy. That's their problem. If they're healthy, they're a good team, and they should be a lock for the playoffs, but that's the concern.
Dude, what a depressing emoji.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing, so stay healthy, Pelicans. But let's talk about League Pass. You going to watch the Pelicans this year?
They have a surprisingly good amount of national TV games. They're on 13 times on national TV, and so I'll probably catch those. It just depends, man. Anthony Davis has that, like we've mentioned a ton in this podcast. Anthony Davis has that injury history, and if he's hurt, I mean, I'm not going to watch the Pelicans.
But if he's healthy, I might watch the Pelicans.
Yeah, if he's healthy, I'll probably give him a watch, especially since they'll be playing a lot of like teams in the West more often than none. So Western Conference games are always must watches.
Yeah, and they play their own division well, which is full of a ton of great playoff teams. So I'll keep an eye on the Pelicans for sure. And I like all the young players as long as they're healthy.
Yep.
Would you rather watch the Pelicans or Are You the One?
Are You the One? MTV's The Bachelor. I think that's a fair comparison. It's a little bit more interesting than The Bachelor. I've seen a couple episodes of The Bachelor, but Are You the One it's an interesting show, interesting concept. It's hilarious. These people are idiots on the show, to be honest. But it makes for entertaining TV if you're bored. I've seen the last 2 seasons. I think the new season will be underway by the time this podcast is released. I don't know. That's tough. If Anthony Davis isn't hurt, I'll watch the Pelicans. But if he's hurt, I'm definitely tuning into Are You the One?
Fair enough. So the Pelicans have the win with a healthy Anthony Davis. Sounds like most of their season.
Right.
But thank you guys for listening. And our next team has some players on NYPD's most wanted list.